He awakens a god-level powerful armor and becomes the strongest swordsman. Leon is a 17-year-old boy who trained his whole life to use the sword. Not for fun, but because he must do it to complete his revenge and duty. He was born on the same night his mother, Anna, was captured and burned down at the stake charged with being a witch. She was a Makai priestess, a part of an order of armored knights called the Makai Knights who fought to rid the world of demons called horrors. Anna was heavily pregnant when she was set on fire at the stake. But before she could burn any longer, she gave birth to Leon and used magic to protect him while people witnessed it. Leon's father, Herman, was held captive because he was also a Makai Knight. Zoro broke out of his prison as soon as Anna gave birth. He sprung into action and ran outside to go into the flames to save Leon. He took him and took off, leaving the town of Valiant. But the culprit, Mendoza the king's advisor, ordered the royal knights to go after Zoro to capture him and his newborn son. Realizing that the escape of one knight poses a threat to him, told the king to do a witch hunt. Over 100 of the Makai knights and priests were killed by the royal knights. And now 17 years later, Leon stands tall after inheriting his mother's Makai knight armor, Garo the Golden Knight. Despite the years, he and his father are still being hunted down by the royal knights. Mendoza used to be a Makai order alchemist, but he became consumed by his power. He started to use it for evil and the order cursed him to never pass it down to his offspring because he would never have a normal child. He went to the royal castle in Santa Bard and was adopted for his powerful healing abilities. He later married, but his offspring was cursed and he was forced to kill it, and decided to exterminate every Makai knight. Meanwhile, in the present, the royal knights managed to find out father and son's hideout and decided to burn it down. But Leon is inside, in the midst of the fire without any special reaction. One of the royal guards gets inside to challenge him. Leon uses his Makai Knight power to summon Garo, his armor that sets half of his body in flames. The two engage in a fight, and Leon quickly overpowers the human knight. But after projecting the knight into the air, the knight starts to transform into a demon, and throws the burnt hideout against Leon. Leon doesn't take any damage, and rushes forward, plunging his sword into the demon's head. But the demon still stands up, and Leon prepares his stance. Many of the other guards run away at the sight of the fight, and Leon rushes again, slicing the demon's members until he delivers the final blow. He watches the sunrise, and his father appears after spending a whole night with the ladies. He blames his father for leaving him alone when he knew the knights would attack. But Herman simply tells him that it was all a test before they set out to get their revenge. Zoro, whose real name is Herman, after escaping Valiant, showed the infant Leon from afar what they had done to his mother before getting out of the kingdom. While stopping to rest, Leon has a nightmare of his mother being burned at the stake. He always has those nightmares, suffering from the burn marks from his mother's death. Those burn marks turn him into the flaming Garo when he's in distress, and because of it, Leon has resentment towards all the horrors that exist and has vowed vengeance on Mendoza. His father wakes him up by throwing him into the river. They continue their journey, but Leon doesn't like his father's jokes about his mother and his burn marks. Herman wants his son to make light of the matter and sometimes just take it one day at a time. But Leon wants Mendoza and his demons gone as soon as possible. While Herman fools around, Leon finds a burning stake where he gets a vision of his mother burning. A man appears and tells him that ever since his mother was killed, there has been a curse causing many women to die, and so the burning of witches continues as another witch has been captured for another burning. Leon tells his father about this and finds that he already knows about it. Herman tells him that the witch is a Makai alchemist, who can be valuable to them. They decide to rescue her and Herman barges in where she is held captive while Leon fights the horror that caught her outside after Herman drives it out to save Emma. But Emma is strong enough to handle her own and frees herself. She goes outside and helps Leon a bit before he's sent down with a bridge cut in half. He lands at the place where his mother was burned and has another vision of when it happened and how he got the marks. He immediately changes into the Garo and goes back to fighting the horror. He goes out of control and Herman tries to stop him and calm him down as Emma finishes off the horror. Herman then receives a message from Gale, a Makai alchemist who was working on fixing Zaruba, a demon ring that belonged to Leon's mother. And with this ring we'll be able to control Leon's powers and flames. Emma decides that she'll join them but instead places a tracker on Leon. The next morning, they leave for Gale and she secretly follows them. They make their way to the hideout but are welcomed by some traps of flying sharp objects that Marcello, Gale's apprentice, dispatches until Herman reveals his name. Gale gets angry at Marcello and yells at him for this mistake, which upsets him, and he runs away to see the Zaruba before its rightful owner takes it. Marcello has always wanted the Zaruba and he still does. He thought Herman and Leon wouldn't come back for it. Gale goes back to finish it, and as he does, Marcello hears the ring call to him. It tells him that he shouldn't let the father and son take it after so many years. It tells him to forcefully take it for himself instead, and he transforms into his knight and kills Gale. He takes the Zaruba and runs off, but meets Emma on the way, who takes it from him and runs off with it too. When Leon and Herman hear the explosion of the brief fight between Marcello and Emma, they go check it out and find a wounded Marcello, who tells them that Emma took the ring and killed Gale. Leon goes after her and finds her hiding. She fights him as soon as he attacks her. She tells him that Marcello attacked her because she let her guard down as he turned into a horror. Herman confronts Marcello about killing Gale because Emma doesn't stab people. Marcello instantly changes into a horror, and Herman leads him out into the open. Marcello tries to use Zaruba but fails because Zaruba only makes deals with the Garo. He changes into a horror, and Leon takes him on with the Garo and stabs him through the gut, where he wears the ring and meets Zaruba. He makes a deal with Zaruba. With newfound power, he cuts up the horror and kills it. Herman and Leon continue their journey to a village where people are rumored to be disappearing and introduce themselves as pilgrims. When they ask about these rumors after arriving, the mayor denies everything. Later, they find a boy, Awa, bullied about the wooden doll that he carries all the time since his father died, and they save him. He invites them to his home, and his mother welcomes them. She's always been accused of being a witch because she was born somewhere else, and she tells them about it. Her husband was killed by a thief, she believes, and people started blaming her for everything suddenly. While they eat, the villagers barge into her home and demand their children from her. Herman tries to intervene, but they continue with their slander. They take her outside to force her to confess to knowing something. Awa runs away from home as some other villagers try to catch him. Herman goes and frees the woman but gets caught in the act as a part of his ruse. They somehow let him take the woman back home and secretly plan some type of exorcism ceremony. Leon finally finds Awa but makes himself heard, so Awa hides for a minute but comes out when he sees that it's only Leon. After returning home, Herman tells Leon that he thinks Awa could be a horror after having tested everyone with some bells, and Leon tells him that he must be dealt with accordingly. But surprisingly, it's not him. The mother tells them about the carpenter who was killed to purify their village after Leon asks about the carpenter's cabin that Awa was hiding in. Leon realizes that the horror is the wooden doll and goes out to find Awa, who had left again. Herman and Awa mother suddenly get attacked by the villagers for the ceremony, while Leon finds Awa and asks for the doll. The doll transforms into a horror right then, and Leon fights it. It uses Awa face as a defense strategy, and Leon falls for it. Awa begs Leon to not hurt the horror because he wants it to continue hurting and killing the villagers for killing his father. Leon gives in, but the horror continues to go and kill the villagers outside Awa house. Leon follows it and finally decides to fight it. Maneuvering from side to side, the Garo manages to throw the horror to the ground. He kills it, making Awa cry. The next day, they visit the father's grave, and Leon says goodbye to Awa, who looks much happier with his mother. Leon meets with Zaruba, who takes what's his from him, a year off his life as part of their deal, and he loses consciousness. He sees the Garo, and it tells him to learn to accept his flames and his sword, and he finally regains consciousness on a ride heading to Santa Bard. Leon still pesters Herman about storming the castle, but Herman still thinks that it's too early and goes on his night mission. While trying to rest, he gets suddenly attacked by the royal knights. Apparently, the son of the king went missing, and the owners of the inn reported Leon's presence, confusing him with the prince. He managed to escape outside and run away, but unfortunately, he met their captain, Bernardo Dion, a Mackay knight who joined Mendoza's side. Bernardo attacks Leon, and Leon transforms into the Garo as well, and an intense fight ensues. Leon gets knocked out by Bernardo, which causes his armor to disable, leaving him open and vulnerable to the Black Knight. Luckily, Emma saves him and they both manage to escape. A few days later, Leon asks for an enemy to train for when he takes down Mendoza. While training, he finds it easy to defeat all the provided horrors and wants something challenging, so he decides to take on the Chimera of Orvian. While heading to the monster's location, he ends up helping a guy named Alfonso from getting scammed by everyone in town. Later, they have dinner and introduce themselves to each other properly and end up heading in the same direction in their journeys. In their confusion as to why they are going the same way, they realize that the Chimera of Orvian is their enemy, and they must work together to defeat it. They try their best to fight it, but it proves to be too strong for both of them even when combined. Leon changes into the Garo and tries his best to fight, but gets trapped and crushed between the horror and a hard place. He calls Alfonso for help, but the latter is having doubts until Raphael, his master, the Mackay Knight Gaia, arrives and puts up a fight that frees Leon from his entrapment. But Raphael is sick and cannot win against the horror. He gets pierced and fatally wounded, and he passes on his sword to Alfonso to succeed him as Gaia. Alfonso takes the sword and transforms into Gaia and stands up to the weakened Chimera and successfully kills it. Leon decides to help Alfonso with his mission of ridding Valiant of the horrors, and so they join forces, while also finding out that Alfonso is the missing prince and Leon's cousin. Mendoza found out the queen was Anna's younger sister and accused her of poisoning the king. She was arrested. Alfonso ran from the castle and met his master. They meet up with Herman and Emma and continue their plan to infiltrate the castle. The infiltration begins as soon as sundown and Alfonso leads them through a secret passage. They go through an area infested with horrors and barely escape them, but after their little moment's victory, they are met with a much bigger danger in the name of Bernardo, the Black Knight himself. Leon and Alfonso run down the stairs to find Mendoza but are blocked by horror knights from finding out what Mendoza's doing. But they persevere and make it through and find a secret passage in another room, with more stairs leading to where Mendoza actually is. They finally come face to face with him and watch him as he summons a horror from the dark abyss. Leon and Alfonso transform into their armor and try to fight the demon and Mendoza simultaneously. Mendoza taunts Leon while Alfonso fights the beast by himself. But Mendoza notices Leon's ring is consuming his flames, so he doesn't lose control of himself. He puts Leon under a spell that freezes him on the spot, and he shows him the night his mother was burned at the stake. He shows him an image of how much she screamed while being burnt on the stake, which causes his scars to burn up more. It fuels the flames in him, causing an explosion that destroys everything in its way with its fireball projectiles. He loses control in his mind that he goes rampage even more as his mother's burnt body withers away. His Garo armor takes a new form, becoming a pure beast, and Mendoza reveals the Garo armor only reaches its true form when the knight gives himself to sin. Alfonso tries his best to stop him and get him back to his senses, but Leon is far too consumed whole that the only way to stop him is to destroy his armor's core. With the might of Gaia, he destroys the armor and Leon comes back to himself. Alfonso walks over to Garo's sword and takes it, transforms into the Garo, and takes on Mendoza and the horror. He successfully slays the horror which had consumed Mendoza a second before and kills both of them. When all is over, Leon crawls to Alfonso and begs for his sword and armor, but his father tells him that the Garo now belongs to Alfonso. And Leon is not a Makai knight anymore, he's a simple person. Leon desperately begs for it because without it, he has no meaning in his life. But Alfonso shows him the destruction he caused as the Garo. Alfonso goes to free his mother only to find she has ended herself to protect him. Meanwhile, Leon leaves and goes on his way on his own to a cliff, where he cries his heart out until he lets his body fall. Watch this next video. See you on the next one.